In 1925, Frank Phillips had already made the first of many millions to come as he struck one oil gusher after another. So, with the good times rolling, he began construction on his country home, a lodge in the hills of Osage County. It was built with Arkansas pine and sandstone from the property. The lodge, still sturdy as ever, overlooks Clyde Lake on the vast 3,700-acre ranch.
Mr. Phillips loved this place. He spent many an afternoon and early evening sitting on this porch and enjoying this view, as you can imagine. I mean, you look out there and it doesn't get much better than that.
Woolaroc's Bob Frazier is our guide. He says Mr. Phillips and guests would often sit out here and do a little target shooting.
Mr. Phillips put a target, and he put a metal face on it, and he and his guests would take target practice from up here. That way they'd know if they hit it, they could hear it. The ping sound from across the lake.
I guess a lot of important people walk through this threshold.
Absolutely, you bet they did. We tell people all the time it's like a who's who list of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. The people that were here over the years. It was really the leading people of business, from Hollywood, the theater.
Pictures of those who stayed here over the years fill the walls of the upstairs bedroom of Frank's wife, Jane. Signed photos of Presidents Harry Truman and Herbert Hoover are here. Will Rogers is pictured with famous violinist Rubinoff. Crooner Rudy Valley was also a guest. Hours can be spent in her room looking at all the photographs of famous people. Her room is just as she left it. So is the great room where guests were entertained. It is a sprawling space with a high-pitched ceiling. Here, rustic mingles with the exquisite. The chandeliers hanging from the ceiling came from the first Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. Mounted high up on the walls are stuffed heads of animals. Some of the animals were native to the area.
And I always like to point out that Mr. Phillips was not a hunter, and most of these animals lived and died here on the ranch of natural causes.
Some, like the zebra, camel, and moose, were not native to the Osage land. It's amazing all these animals could survive out of their natural habitat here.
Well, true, but some of them were on the wall because they couldn't.
Phillips' collection grew as he received gifts from friends. One he received came months after a high-stakes poker game upstairs.
They were playing on a Friday night, and the pot got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Mr. Phillips ended up betting one of his oil leases. And John Ringling countered with his circus, and Mr. Phillips won the bet.
Frazier says the story gets a little fuzzy from there. The game could have gone around the clock because Phillips always had a cot right next to the table for weary players. In any event, during the weekend, Mr. Ringling won back his circus.
About 3 months later, a large box arrives here at the ranch. They open it up, and there's a card inside, and it says, "This is a reminder that for one day you owned my circus."
That gift, the head of an elephant, is mounted prominently over the great room. The lodge is 8,300 square feet. It has 9 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms, one of which includes a sauna for Mr. Phillips. One of the rooms belonged to Mr. Phillips's longtime butler, Dan Matani, from Japan. When Matani died, he was a millionaire, and it wasn't accrued from what Phillips paid him.
He was privy to a lot of conversations of a lot of very powerful, influential people, and he listened and probably invested accordingly.
He slept right next door to the room of Frank Phillips.
It's like walking into a time capsule, because this is what it looked like last time Frank walked out of it.
The walls are filled with a set of lithographs of Indian chiefs. Their portraits were painted in Washington, D.C. as the federal government took over the chiefs' tribal lands. The originals are in the Smithsonian. Phillips preferred a single bed, and this one was built by his ranch manager. Next to Mr. Phillips's chair in the room is an ashtray built of a buffalo's jawbone. Every year, Phillips would host an outdoor party under the pavilion across the lake from the lodge. It was called the Cow Thieves and Outlaws Reunion.
They had 2 rules, and that was everybody had to check their guns at the front gate, law enforcement and the outlaws, and there was amnesty for 24 hours. And so we've got pictures of the sheriff with his arm around the bank robber that he'd been chasing for the last month or 2 months and couldn't get him, and here he was at the party and couldn't do anything about it, and then the chase started again the next day.
The party is still held here each fall with a decidedly different guest list, but it's held as a continuing legacy of Phillips, who helped make Oklahoma what it is today.